Welcome to another edition of Horror Tales from Around the Net. Tonight's episode, Final Fantasy Dark Destinity. One of my favorite video games is the Final Fantasy series. I played just about every game in the series, even the ones that weren't released in the United States where I live. Not to mention the spin-off titles. My favorite game, and maybe my favorite game of all, is Final Fantasy VII. I must have played it at least 3 times to 100% completion by now. I know some people might think it's not as good as most people think it is, but although I was getting bored of the game, I couldn't stop playing it because it was just that good. But on my 4th playthrough, something happened that I'll never forget. This isn't your average story. If you thought you knew Final Fantasy VII, think again. Because, like me, this story of Cloud will probably change how you see him forever. It all started that day I began my final playthrough of the game. I put the disc in the PS1 and started a new game like anyone would. But I noticed something was about how it started. The PS1 began smoking and strange sounds were made. I thought maybe the disc was corrupt, but kept on playing in case anything happened. I was playing as Cloud, but he was not in Midgar's normal. He seems to be standing in what looked like the debug room, but how's that possible? I didn't have a hacked game, and I certainly didn't get the game from some old manor or garage sale like most. I took out the game and checked it, and something indeed was wrong. There was a large scratch running across the disc, and it was very deep, smoking as if the console had burnt the gashing scratch into the CD. I began wondering how could the game even work at all. I don't remember scratching the game or anything. I shrugged it off, however, and put the game back in the system. In the strange debug room, Yuffie, I forget how to pronounce her name, was the only thing I could talk to, like in the normal debug room, I suppose. However, the options that appeared when I speak to her aren't the normal options. There were only 3. They said in bold font that wasn't normal for Final Fantasy. It looked like it was written in blood, as if with a paintbrush of some kind. The words said help us and kill him and too late. I select the first option, help us, to see what happens. The screen fades out and into Cloud standing there surrounded by his teammates, except Yuffie. They were suspended in the same tanks from the Nibelheim Mako reactor. This is all your fault, I heard Barrett say. What had he mean? Had Cloud done this to them? Could he have done this to them? My question was answered. You let him do this to us, Tifa had said. So it was not Cloud, but someone else. But who? They seemed in pain as if the Mako tanks were hurting them. Indeed, it seemed as if their skin was being burned alive by the liquid as they began to transform into monsters made from Mako poisoning. Soon they died right there in their hideous state. Cloud screamed, which was odd because I don't remember the game even having voice acting. He grabbed his head and began shaking it like the animation he makes when Sephiroth gets in his mind. The screen faded then again, and Cloud was back in the debug room with Yuffie was standing there again. I talked to her again, and help us was no longer there. I select kill him next, but immediately I was thrust into a battle scenario. No music played. Cloud was facing an enemy. That enemy was none other than Sephiroth himself. But the battle was easy, like the final battle between Cloud and Sephiroth at the end of the game. Somehow Cloud seemed to have no level, but had 9,999 in health, and all stats and attributes was afflicted with the sadness status ailment. I select the attack option, and Sephiroth offered no defense against Cloud's slash, as if he wanted to die. He doesn't even try to resist. But the great slash did nothing. No attack points even showed up above Sephiroth after the hit. You could have saved them, Sephiroth said. Your friends, your home, even him too. But it's too late for him now. Him? What could he mean? Who was him he was talking about? Then before I could choose another option, Sephiroth died just there as a giant sword pierced his chest. Blood burst from his chest as the sword was pulled out. It was a Buster Sword, like Cloud's. But who else could have a Buster Sword but him? It could only be. The one wielding the sword was a black silhouette who I could not make out. He walked away into the darkness and bowed me to follow him, but the screen faded to black before I could. I was back in the debug room and Yuffie presented the final option. Too late. I selected and then the unthinkable happened. Yuffie's head exploded with fierce intensity and blood-red fluid begins gushing from her neck. If you're strong enough, come get me, or else you're next, I heard a voice say. I'm scared now. Was someone hunting Cloud and his friends? Was someone hunting me? I realized what I must do. I move Cloud towards the shadowy figure who appears. He draws his Buster Sword and slashes Cloud. Cloud was knocked out and the screen fades. He awakes in a dark room like the planet's core at the end of the game. Cloud's friends are all dead with body parts cut of and hanging floating in the air surrounding the planet's core. How does it feel to have everything taken away? The voice said. Finally, I had a clear sight of who he was. The black figure faded and revealed that it was Zack Fair. The same Zack Fair that saved Cloud from Shinra all those years ago. You took my life. I took your friends, Zack said. Now do you remember? When I died, you took on my identity and lived in Midgar as me, forgetting everything I did for you. Well, now it's my turn to ruin your life. But this wasn't possible. Zack was supposed to be dead? How could he be haunting Cloud, his best friend? There was no way this is possible. Cloud could do nothing in defense. Zack stabbed him through the heart with his sword and Cloud begins screaming in agony. Zack's face is dark now, his bloodlust eyes highlighted by his desire to kill. As Cloud dies, he utters his last breath. Soon, Zack faces me and says something he'll never forget. You're next. The end. This has been another edition from Horror Tales Around the Net. Join us next time for another horrifying tale. Bloopers. I was back in the debug room and Yuffie presented the final option. Too late. I select it and the unthinkable happened. Yuffie's head exploded with fierce Oh my god, that's stupid.